Hi guys, what's hanging? It's Morna here, your host, bringing you the best in dive safety tips and so much more. In this week's Dan show, we're going to be talking to Dr. France about seasickness and do a quick review on some Dan gear. So it's the right time now to kick back, relax and enjoy the show. So welcome back, Dr. France. How's it going?
Wonderful. It's great to be as always. I really enjoy these sessions. Hope you guys do too. And we'd like some comments from you so that we can keep it relevant and make sure that we give you the information in the way you want it and the way you can absorb it best.
Well, certainly it's great to have you back on the show after doing so many other things, I guess, out in the field. But this week I thought to have a chat about seasickness and how that kind of impacts on divers and things we should maybe know about seasickness.
Yes.
So I guess the first thing to really have a chat about is, what is seasickness really? I mean, how would one explain it besides maybe feeling sick?
Right. Well, seasickness of course goes beyond the sea. So motion as such can cause us to become nauseous. And why that happens of course is complicated. But basically, we have different senses that allow us to determine our orientation in space. We use our eyes, we use our inner ears, we use our essentially joints and muscles and the sense of gravity. And all of these signals are put in through the brain and are synchronized with a pattern of what is considered normal. And when it deviates from what the body essentially is calibrated to as normal, as we grow up bouncing as kids, etc., we get almost a mental image of what is normal. And when we're exposed to environments that deviate from that, the body's response is to produce nausea. And one of the theories is that it's allowed man to survive poisoning, when we were sort of experimenting with food. And whenever there'd be this sort of disturbance, the first response would be to have nausea. We've survived probably as a result of that, but the disadvantage is when we're in an environment like the ocean and diving, that can cause the sensory conflict, and when that happens, then motion sickness or seasickness develops.
Okay, so then, it's quite a mouthful, but it all makes sense.
Hopefully not.
Well, I tell you what, so what can the diver do, Dr. France?
Well, you get essentially three aspects that determine how sick people get.
Yeah.
It's essentially how sensitive you are to begin with. Mm-hmm. Then secondly, how quickly you adapt to the new environment. And thirdly, how quickly you unlearn what you were exposed to. Okay. So the people that are the most vulnerable are the ones that are hypersensitive, slow to learn, and slow to unlearn.
Okay.
So they'll be the sickest, take the longest to adapt, and once they have, they'll be wobbly afterwards.
Yeah.
So those are the variables, and with that, you have different degrees, I would say, of sickness. Okay. So I can get into that unless you had a question before I go there.
No, well, I guess maybe it's best to first delve into those and then see if there's any, medications or remedies.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we don't like people taking remedies unnecessarily. But what we found with seasickness, and this is my classification, so it's not a scientific evidence-based approach, but it's very definitely a practical approach, is to divide people into three classes, sort of a grade 0, 1, 2, and 3. And grade 0s would be people that are never sick. So they are the envy of everybody else. They can sit in the diesel fumes at the back of the boat and everybody's over the edge.
That's me. I've been fortunate.
We hate you, rest assured. Speaking for many of us, I'm sure. So the grade 0s clearly don't have a problem.
Yeah.
The grade 1s are the people that may get sick on a boat. Okay. So they're the ones that if it takes long to kit up or if the sea state's a bit unsteady, they're the ones that would get sick in the boat, but as soon as they're in the water, they're fine.
Now, can I ask a question?
Yes,
please. When I used to still be a skipper way back in Mozambique, many times some guys would complain about the boat moving.
Right.
But many times the guys say as you start the motor or put it off, the fumes of the petrol and things make them sick and then they feel seasick.
Right.
Does that have an impact on seasickness at all, or is it just part of?
Yes, well, absolutely. Interestingly, in looking at the different motions that cause people to get seasick, obviously you've got pitching, you've got yawing, and you've got rolling. And the one that actually causes motion sickness seems to be the pitching. And how we know that is people don't tend to get motion sick on horses, but they do get sick on camels, because the pitch of a camel is different from a horse. So what you're describing is, depending on what sort of boat it is, and each boat has its own rhythm, some boats are more prone to give you a pitch that would produce motion sickness, and as soon as you engage the engines, of course, and you're aquaplaning, then that pitching motion's gone. So you're absolutely right.
So avid boaters, take note. Check the pitch of the boat before you buy.
You're right, though. And people habituate to a particular boat, so you know they'll be fine, and then suddenly they change, and then they're sick all over again. So you're absolutely right.
Well, it'd be interesting maybe to do a research study from when, say, diving started in Sudwana with the old butt cats to now with, say, the more rubber duck type styles, and see if, In any case, I digress. We
This
still
is what
on
we're here for. Absolutely. So anyway, the grade ones then are the ones that would get sick on the boat. I'm not that concerned about them, because the greater issue, apart from dehydration, which we can also talk about, is vomiting in water. Because if you get seasick to the point that you're actually vomiting in water, there's the concern of breath holding, there's the concern of breathing in, you know, what you're throwing up.
So definitely risk factor.
Absolutely, and you know, choosing what you eat so that you don't block the portals, you know, those sort of things. I mean, there are some practical things to consider.
Sure.
But for the grade 2s, which is what I would call people who get sick in the water, we are more prone to recommend something active. In other words, try something more than the home remedies. And then the grade 3s would be the ones that are not only sick on the boat, not only sick in the water, but they're also sick afterwards. And each of these would have different approaches.
Yeah, you know, my wife, Dr. Franz, she is prone to motion sickness, I guess. On the boat, definitely. The kit-up story you spoke of, we kind of have to help her. Once she's in the water, everything is fine.
She's a great one.
But, interesting enough, she can drive to work sometimes and in the car. But then get motion sickness as well. So it just depends. Aeroplanes at the same time. So as much as she enjoys traveling, she doesn't, because there's this motion sickness factor.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
she's almost like cross-pollinated the different types you get, I guess.
Yes. Well, one often finds a combination of people who are prone to migraines are also a little bit more sensitive to motion. So there's sometimes an association there. And the prevention to migraine, which are the things that they usually figure out, often also help them to become less sensitive to motion sickness. So there is a bit of an association there to be aware of. But it's often also in traffic, you know, it's that pitching, you know, stop, start, or going up and down hills. Those are the sort of things that can cause problems.
So I guess remedies and medication or muti. What do you recommend?
Grade noughts clearly don't need anything other than the envy of others. The grade 1s, these might be the individuals that would do well with home remedies like ginger. The wristbands or the pressure bands work for some people. But if they do need to go to medication, then cenarizine, which is the active ingredient in a product or medication called Stugeron. Stugeron seems to be very good for grade 1s. Now, you should never take medication for the first time when you go diving, because you need to make sure it's not sedating, you're not allergic, you don't have unwanted side effects, and it's not wise to dive deeper than 18 to 24 meters on any medication that is potentially sedating.
So check it on land for a while before you just go and dive with it.
Absolutely, at least a day before.
A very important message that I think sometimes we forget about. We're so keen to dive, and I just need a quick fix because I can't miss this dive, and then I've paid for the dive, all that kind of jazz, you know. So
and borrowing someone else's pills, you know. So let me try those red capsules or whatever.
They work.
Not a good idea on the fly. Not a good idea on the fly. So I think that's important that people are aware of that. And then obviously try it out and see if that works for you. And the idea with grade 1s would be the boat aspect. But also that one looks at the horizon, that you plan your kit up so that you don't spend too much time on the boat. You know, the practical things that you could really do to make it easier.
And I guess then, make the skipper and the buddies and people on the boat aware, maybe, even though it might be a bit uncomfortable sharing that info. But better let them know than, I guess.
Yes, prevention is better than cure when it comes to motion sickness. In other words, either preventing your getting sick or taking something that will prevent you from getting sick is much better than trying to remedy it once you're already nauseous. So at that point, it's harder to get you back to non-nausea than preventing you from getting nauseous to begin with. So that's certainly a take-home message. Do you want to carry on with the grade 2s?
Yeah, we might as well.
Okay.
We're rolling now.
All right. Well, the grade 2s are the ones that vomit in the water, and I'm a little bit concerned about those, as we mentioned, because of the airway issues and so on, breath holding.
Yeah.
So there are a number of potential medications one can take, but the one that I would probably experiment with first is a medication called Phenergan, which is very sedating, but it's a 25 milligram tablet, and you take it the night before.
Okay.
So here's why it's good. I'm going to talk about a medication that's quite sedating, but it's very helpful if you take it the night before. And this is how it works. Because it's sedating, you actually would get a better night's sleep.
Yeah.
You sleep off the sedating effects, but the anti-motion sickness effects
Yeah.
last
Okay.
well into the next day.
All right.
So you lose the bad, but keep the good. And it's only one that you take the night before. So it's not constant medication,
Yes, okay.
especially once your stomach is upset. So that's what I would recommend for the grade 2s, the in-the-water vomiters, if you like.
So, I mean, how long does it last into the next day?
12 hours easily. So
okay.
for most vacations where people would do 2 dives pretty much in the morning,
Yeah.
it's perfect. If you get into night diving, clearly you're not going to take it during the day. If you have to top up, then I would probably suggest taking a Stugeron then later in the day. But definitely not taking the Phenergan in the day, because it's very sedating. It's about as sedating as the old legal limit for alcohol.
Oh, wow.
So it's quite sedating.
Okay.
So we don't want to do that while diving. So the grade 3s then are the ones that would be sick on the beach afterwards, under the umbrella, basically hugging the sand for the rest of the day. Those are the people that actually do very well with a medication that's been used for the treatment of epilepsy. Now, we don't use it at the dosages you would use to prevent epilepsy. Dilantin in America, or Epineutin in South Africa. You'd need to go and see a doctor. Obviously, some people would have contraindications, so it's not for everybody. But people who have grade 3 motion sickness do well, typically with 5 milligrams per kilogram. So it'll be calculated for you, but if you're 100 kilograms, then it will be 500 milligrams.
Yeah.
You typically take it twice a day, so 250 in the morning, 250 at night. And that protects people against that sort of after miserable type of effect.
Okay.
And it's not for long-term use. There are the scopoderm patches, but they're hard to get. They have additional side effects. I mean, we can titrate, and people can call the hotline, and we can try and help you find the solution that's good for you.
Well, I guess the take-home message is don't just take Muti from some other guy's medical box, because they might have the Epineutin, as you say, and so take this because it's going to work for you. No, the take-home message needs to be specifically catered for your needs as such.
And proven as safe for you prior to diving, not on the first dive.
Now, these patches you spoke of, I believe they're quite effective, but there seem to be some side effects. I was listening to a talk by Dr. Khalil the other day where he said that some, I think, US Navy study proved that you have to wash your hands before the time because it causes some issues with the eyes and things like that.
Yes. Well, it's related to a plant-derived product called belladonna, and the name derives from women who used to put it in their eyes to dilate their pupils so they'd look more attractive. And that's the side effect. What happens is either sometimes when it's absorbed in the skin, and usually people are asked to apply it to a degreased area of skin, typically behind the ear. It works for 3 days. It starts working within about 6 hours. Clearly, if you have side effects, you have a long-term issue. So you want to try it at least 48 hours or 24 hours before you go diving. You apply it. It works for 3 to 4 days. You need to make sure it stays on. It sticks pretty well. Yes, you can get some of the active ingredient on the hands, and if you then end up rubbing your eyes, then you'll get a dilated pupil on that side. And doctors are very concerned about a one-sided dilated pupil. I mean, it's basically a sign of a brain hemorrhage. So you'll get the attention you don't want if you get that side effect. So that's one of the disadvantages. It can also cause hallucinations, so people can start seeing weird things underwater. So it's not a first choice. The Navy did recommend it if a person is side effect free for 24 hours. It's great for extended boat travel. People who get sick on ocean cruises do extremely well. It's a little bit harder to get in South Africa. And if your trip is more than 3 days, then you'd have to apply another one. So you'd remove the one on the one side and you'd replace it on the other side. But yes, wash your hands to make sure you don't get it in your eye. Make sure you haven't developed side effects for at least 24 hours. And then yes, it would be reasonable to use underwater, and make sure that it stays on.
Well, I guess the best thing to do if you don't know or if you're looking for advice is always to call the Dan
Absolutely.
hotline.
And refer to the articles. There's some excellent articles written by our colleagues. Louis van Heerden has written an excellent article that you can refer to, and the link's available to you.
Absolutely. Well, we're talking about the hotline. We got some cool Dan gear, and one of them is a little wristband, which is really inexpensive. You can purchase that from the Dan online store, or just give us a buzz, drop us an email. But the nice thing is, when you go diving, you've got the Dan logo obviously on there, but you've also got the emergency hotline numbers on. So, when you're in SA, you can use the 0800 toll-free number, or then obviously traveling outside the country, anywhere internationally, you have to phone the international number. But keep this in mind, it's a small, inexpensive thing, but very valuable to have. Yeah.
Especially the international number, the local 0800 020 111 number is everywhere, and it's easy to remember. The international number is also memorable, but it's not quite as memorable. So I would definitely recommend, particularly if you're a Dan Southern Africa member and you're diving even within our region but out of South Africa, definitely if you're overseas, that you have a wristband or at least a way to remember the number and have it readily available for other people to call if you need help.
Absolutely. Well, any parting thoughts from Seasickness side? Maybe some quick tips for the guys to remember?
Yes, well, first of all, it's treatable and it's not something that you have to live with. So there is a solution for you. Secondly, it does get better. With age, seasickness actually does become less prevalent. So there's something to be said for older divers when it comes to that.
Right.
And just be sensible. In other words, if it is a problem, rather deal with it. Don't pretend it doesn't exist. Don't take tons of ginger thinking it's going to make things better. It may actually end up making it worse.
Yeah.
So be sensible, and if you don't know, call Dan. We love to help.
Well, great. That wraps it up for this week. For all the show notes, check down below. You'll find links to the articles. If you're looking for more info on Dan, you can go to www.dansa.org, or simply just give us a ring on 011 266 4900. Until next time, you've watched The Dan Show.